The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 3 in the morning, its chime echoing through the darkened mansion like a death knell. I'd been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling of my small room in the servants' quarters, my mind churning with worry. The latest medical bill for my sister Maya sat folded in my pocket, the numbers burning through the fabric like acid. 17 years old and fighting leukemia, while I scrubbed floors in a monster's house. I couldn't sleep. Not tonight. Not when Maya's voice had sounded so thin on our afternoon call, so tired despite her attempts to sound cheerful. The clinical trial her doctors wanted to try cost more than I'd make in 5 years at my current salary. 5 years of being invisible, of keeping my head down, of pretending I didn't notice how Kieran Blackwood's steel-gray eyes followed me through rooms I cleaned. The kitchen was my refuge during sleepless nights. Something about the gleaming copper pots and the lingering scent of tonight's dinner, rosemary and garlic, brought a temporary peace. I moved through the darkness with practiced ease, not bothering with lights. 18 months in this house had taught me every creaking floorboard, every shadow. I pulled my phone from my robe pocket, settling onto one of the stools at the massive marble island. The cold stone pressed through the thin silk. A gift from Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper who'd taken pity on my threadbare nightgown months ago. My finger hovered over Maya's contact. It was late, but she'd asked me to send her a voice message before bed. Something to listen to when the hospital sounds kept her awake. Taking a breath, I hit record, keeping my voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, little moon," I began, using the nickname I'd given her when she was born. "I know you're probably not sleeping either. The hospital at night is too loud, too bright, isn't it?" I remember. I paused, gathering my thoughts. "I wanted to tell you about the garden here. Today the roses finally bloomed. These deep crimson ones that look almost black in certain light. They remind me of that time we tried to grow roses in our apartment window box. Remember how we killed 3 plants before one actually flowered? You were so proud of that single scraggly bloom." A smile tugged at my lips despite the ache in my chest. "These roses here, they're not as beautiful as that one was to us." My voice caught slightly, and I swallowed hard. "Listen, Maya. I know things are scary right now. I know the treatments are hard and the waiting is harder. But you're the strongest person I know. You're my warrior, my little moon that keeps shining even in the darkest night." I blinked back tears. "I'm working on something, okay? Something that's going to help with the bills, with the treatment. I just need you to hold on a little longer. Can you do that for me? Just keep fighting, and I'll fight too. I promise you, we're going to get through this. We always do." I was about to end the recording when footsteps echoed in the hallway. Leather shoes on marble, the distinctive gait I'd learned to recognize from rooms away. My heart slammed against my ribs as I quickly stopped recording, my hands suddenly clumsy as I tried to lock my phone screen. "The kitchen is closed. Miss Torres." Kieran Blackwood's voice cut through the darkness like a blade, smooth, cold, and utterly controlled. He stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway's dim emergency lighting, making it impossible to see his expression. But I didn't need to see it. I could feel the ice in his words, the barely restrained something that had been building between us for months, something I'd worked desperately to ignore. "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwood," I managed, sliding off the stool and clutching my phone like a lifeline. "I couldn't sleep. I was just recording messages at 3 in the morning." He moved into the kitchen with that predatory grace that made every survival instinct I possessed scream at me to run. To whom? The question was casual, almost disinterested, but something in his tone made my spine straighten. "That's none of your business, sir." I regretted the words the moment they left my mouth. In 18 months, I'd never once challenged him, never once stepped out of the role of perfect, invisible servant. His silence stretched between us, heavy and dangerous. He crossed to the island, moving with deliberate slowness. The motion-activated lights flickered on, bathing us both in harsh white light. For the first time, I could see his face clearly, and what I saw there made my breath catch. His jaw was tight, his steel-gray eyes darker than usual, almost black. His expensive white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and traced with faint scars. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Everything in this house is my business, Miss Torres." His voice dropped lower, softer, and somehow more threatening. "Every light bulb that burns out, every window that's opened, every phone call made at inappropriate hours." It was just a voice message to my sister. The words came out sharper than I intended, defense mechanisms kicking in. "She's sick. She can't sleep." I was trying to comfort her. Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify before his expression locked down again. "Your sister." "Yes, my sister." I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze despite every instinct telling me to look away. "She's 17. She has leukemia, and she's terrified. So I send her messages when I can't be there, that's all." He was close enough now that I could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and smoke. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. The man was 6'3" of controlled menace, and I was suddenly very aware that we were alone in this massive house. The rest of the staff slept in the opposite wing, too far away to hear if I screamed. "That's all," he repeated, his eyes searching my face for something I didn't understand. "You weren't, perhaps, communicating with someone else?" The question was so absurd that I almost laughed. "Someone else? Who exactly do you think I have time to communicate with, Mr. Blackwood? Between working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, visiting my sister at the hospital on my one day off, and trying to figure out how to pay for treatments that cost more than I make in a year, I barely have time to sleep, let alone maintain a social life." "You could have asked for assistance." His jaw tightened. The household provides health insurance for employees' families, which covers basic care, not experimental clinical trials. I heard the bitterness in my voice and hated it. "Not that it's any of your concern. I'm handling it." By staying awake until 3 in the morning, recording messages in my kitchen. "Your kitchen," I echoed, something snapping inside me. "Your kitchen, your house, your rules. Everything belongs to you, doesn't it? Even the few moments of peace I try to steal in the middle of the night." The silence that followed my outburst was deafening. I'd crossed a line, multiple lines, and we both knew it. Kieran Blackwood didn't tolerate insubordination. I'd seen him fire people for less, watched him destroy careers with a single phone call. And here I was, his housekeeper for the past 1.5 years, challenging him in his own home. "You should go back to your room, Miss Torres." His voice had gone quiet, dangerous. "Before you say something you'll regret. Or before you fire me." I laughed, a brittle sound. "Go ahead. I'll find another job. There are plenty of other wealthy men who need their floors scrubbed and their secrets kept." His hand shot out, gripping my wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough to stop me from leaving. The contact sent electricity shooting up my arm, making my breath hitch. This was the first time he'd ever touched me. In 18 months of working in his house, of passing him in hallways, of serving him meals, our skin had never once made contact. "You think I want to fire you?" His eyes blazed with something I couldn't name. "You think that's what this is about?" "I don't know what this is about." The words burst out of me. "I don't know why you're even here, why you care who I'm texting at 3 in the morning, why you look at me the way you do when you think I'm not paying attention." "I'm just the help, Mr. Blackwood. I clean your house. That's all. Is it? He stepped closer, still holding my wrist, his thumb finding my pulse point where it hammered frantically. Is that really all you think you are? I pulled away, forcing myself to step back, despite how my body wanted to lean into his warmth. What else would I be? A charity case? Someone to pity because my sister is dying and I'm drowning in medical bills? I don't need your pity, Mr. Blackwood. I don't need anything from you except my paycheck. The muscle in his jaw ticked. Get out! The words were so quiet I almost missed them. When I didn't move, he repeated himself, louder this time. Get out! I fled. There was no other word for it. I ran from that kitchen like my life depended on it. My phone still clutched in my trembling hand, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I didn't stop until I reached my room, locking the door behind me and sliding down to sit on the floor, my back against the wood. What had I done? What had just happened? I'd been working in Kieran's house for 18 months. 18 months of being invisible, of doing my job perfectly, of never drawing attention to myself. And in one night, I'd destroyed it all. Tomorrow I'd probably wake to find my things packed and a severance check waiting. Except he hadn't fired me. He'd told me to leave. Yes, but he hadn't said the words. And the way he'd looked at me, the way his hand had trembled slightly when it gripped my wrist, the raw emotion I'd glimpsed before his mask slammed back down. That wasn't the look of an employer dealing with an insubordinate servant. That was something else entirely. Something that terrified me more than losing my job ever could. Morning arrived with cruel punctuality. I dressed in my usual black uniform, my hands shaking as I buttoned the white collar and pinned my dark hair into its customary bun. The mirror reflected someone who'd barely slept, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and anxiety. In a few minutes, I'd have to face Mrs. Chen and the rest of the staff at breakfast, pretending everything was normal when my world had tilted sideways at 3 a.m. The servants' dining room was already filled with the morning crew when I arrived. Maria, one of the younger maids, waved me over to sit beside her. I forced a smile and took my usual seat, accepting the cup of coffee that Roberto, the head butler, poured for me. "You look awful," Maria whispered, concern crinkling her kind eyes. "Another bad night?" "Something like that." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, grateful for something to hold on to. Has Mr. Blackwood come down yet?" Roberto cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwood left for his office at 5 this morning. He won't be back until evening." His gaze lingered on me, assessing. "He left instructions that Miss Torres is to deep clean his study today, personally." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. His study, the inner sanctum of the mansion, filled with his most private possessions. I'd only been in there 3 times in 18 months, always under Mrs. Chen's supervision. Being assigned to clean it alone was either a test or a punishment. Possibly both. "That's unusual," Mrs. Chen said carefully, her sharp eyes fixed on me. "Did something happen last night, Serafina?" All eyes turned to me. The servants' quarters were small enough that nothing stayed secret for long. If I lied, they'd know. If I told the truth, the rumor mill would churn it into something scandalous by lunch. "We had a disagreement," I said finally, "about boundaries. I may have been disrespectful." Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. "And you're still employed?" "Apparently." I took a long sip of coffee to avoid elaborating. "Though that might change after he sees how I clean his study." The joke fell flat. Everyone knew that Kieran's study was off limits for good reason. It was where he conducted his real business. The business that had nothing to do with the legitimate companies he owned, and everything to do with the network of influence and fear he'd built. I wasn't naive enough to believe his fortune came from legal means alone. After breakfast, I gathered my supplies with leaden movements. The study was on the second floor, in the east wing of the mansion. The walk there felt like a march to an execution. When I reached the heavy oak door, I found it already unlocked. Another message. He wanted me in there. The question was why. The room was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, an enormous desk positioned to face the door, leather furniture arranged near a fireplace that probably cost more than my entire life savings. Everything screamed power and old money. The only personal touch was a single photograph on his desk, Kieran as a young boy, with an older man who shared his features. His father, I assumed, long dead. I started with the bookshelves, carefully removing each volume to dust behind it. Unsurprisingly, many were first editions: Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, Marcus Aurelius. The philosophy of power and control, neatly organized and meticulously maintained. As I worked, I couldn't help but notice other details. A faint scent of his cologne lingering in the air, papers on his desk arranged with military precision, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the side table, as if he'd been sitting there recently. I was dusting the mantel when I noticed it. A security camera mounted in the corner, its red light blinking steadily. Of course. The entire house was wired with cameras, which meant Kieran could be watching me right now from his office downtown. The thought made my hands tremble, nearly dropping the porcelain figurine I was holding. Careful with that. It's 17th century. I spun around so fast I did drop it, only to have it caught mid-air by Kieran himself, who'd materialized in the doorway like a ghost. His reflexes were inhumanly quick, his hand closing around the delicate porcelain before it could shatter on the hardwood floor. "What are you doing here?" The words came out breathless, accusatory. "Roberto said you were at your office." "I came back." He set the figurine down with careful precision, those steel gray eyes never leaving my face. "We need to talk." "About last night?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "Mr. Blackwood, I apologize for my behavior. It was completely inappropriate. I was tired and worried about my sister. But that's no excuse for—" "Stop." He held up one hand, silencing me. "I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to make you an offer." An offer. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with implications I wasn't sure I wanted to understand. Kieran moved past me to his desk, gesturing for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing it. When I hesitated, his jaw tightened. "Sit, Miss Torres. Unless you'd prefer to have this conversation while you're holding a duster." I sat, perching on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to take flight. He settled into his own seat with that easy confidence that came from never doubting his authority. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Your sister needs treatment," he began. "Treatment you can't afford on your current salary. You're drowning in medical bills, working yourself to exhaustion, and it's still not enough. Am I correct?" Shame burned hot in my throat. "That's my problem, not yours." "What if I could solve it?" He leaned forward, his intensity pinning me in place. "What if I could ensure Maya receives the best possible care, access to any clinical trial she needs, and enough financial support that you'd never have to choose between her treatment and your rent again?" It sounded too good to be true. "In exchange for what?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Perceptive. Yes, there would be conditions. Nothing. Unsavory," he added, noting my expression. "I need you to act as my companion. Publicly. For the next 8 months." "Your companion." I let the words roll around in my mouth, tasting their edges. Like a girlfriend? More like a deterrent. He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the gardens. "There's a woman, Valentina Russo. She's been persistent in her attentions. Dangerously so." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, with barely concealed irritation, told me everything I needed to know. And you think having a fake girlfriend will make her back off? Valentina doesn't respond to rejection. She does, however, respect possession. He turned back to face me, his expression carved from ice. If she believes you're mine, she'll leave you alone. It's not about you specifically. It's about removing you as a potential threat. I don't understand. Why would I be a threat to her? His laugh was bitter. Because she's noticed the way I look at you. The confession hung between us, more intimate than any touch. My mouth went dry. You don't look at me any particular way, don't I? He crossed to stand before my chair, forcing me to crane my neck to maintain eye contact. I've watched you for 18 months, Miss Torres. Every morning when you arrange the flowers in the foyer. Every afternoon when you serve tea and think no one's observing how your fingers tremble slightly when you pour mine. Every night when you check the windows before locking up. That little crease of concentration between your eyebrows. Heat flooded my cheeks. That's just you being observant. That's me being obsessed. The words were quiet, controlled, but they hit like a physical blow. And Valentina has noticed. She's made threats, subtle ones, but threats nonetheless. She believes removing you will remove the obstacle to having me for herself. So you want to fake a relationship to protect me from a jealous rival? I shook my head, trying to process. That's insane. And it doesn't explain why you'd go to such lengths for a housekeeper you barely know. Because you're not just a housekeeper. The admission seemed to cost him. Not to me. Not for a while now. The afternoon sun filtered through the study's windows, casting long shadows across the Persian rug. I'd been sitting in stunned silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Kieran had returned to his desk, giving me space to process his revelation. The tick of the antique clock on the mantel was the only sound. I need to think about this, I finally managed, my voice hoarse. It's a lot. Take your time. He gestured to a folder on the desk between us. The contract details are in there. Medical expenses for Maya, including experimental treatments. A monthly stipend for you, separate from your current salary. Security arrangements. And a timeline. 8 months, starting 2 weeks from now. That gives Valentina time to hear about our relationship through the proper channels. I pulled the folder toward me, flipping through pages of dense legal text. The numbers made my head spin. The amount he was offering for Maya's care alone was more than I'd make in 10 years. There had to be a catch. Why 8 months specifically? That's when Valentina's father's business merger will be finalized. Once that happens, she'll be too occupied with her new responsibilities to concern herself with my personal life. He paused. And by then, you'll have had enough time to ensure your sister is on a stable treatment plan. It was all so clinical, so perfectly calculated. Except for one thing. The way his knuckles had whitened when he mentioned watching me. The crack in his composure when he'd admitted to obsession. You said you've been watching me for 18 months. I met his gaze directly. But I've been here 18 months, since the beginning. Something flickered in his eyes. Acknowledgement, maybe even respect for catching that detail. Since the second week. You were cleaning the library. You thought you were alone, so you were singing while you dusted the upper shelves. Something in Italian. Your grandmother taught you. I later learned. Your voice. He trailed off, and for the first time since I'd met him, Kieran Blackwood looked almost vulnerable. The expression was gone in a heartbeat, locked away behind his usual mask, but I'd seen it. That glimpse of the man beneath the ice. That's when it started, he continued, his voice carefully neutral again. I told myself it was nothing, an aesthetic appreciation. You're beautiful, certainly. but I've encountered beauty before. It wasn't until I caught myself rearranging my schedule to be home during your shifts that I realized the problem had become significant. A problem. The word tasted bitter. That's what I am to you? A problem? You're the only thing in 15 years that's made me feel anything other than cold calculation. The admission was matter of fact, devoid of poetry, but somehow that made it more devastating. Yes, Miss Torres, you're definitely a problem. I should have been insulted. Instead, I found myself asking, what happened 15 years ago? His expression shuddered completely. That's not relevant to our current discussion. But it was. Whatever had happened to turn Kieran Blackwood into this frozen statue of a man, it was the key to understanding why he'd rather offer me a contract than simply act on his feelings like a normal person. If I agree to this, I said carefully, what exactly does acting as your companion entail? Public appearances? Private dinners? Do we have to? I couldn't quite finish the sentence. Nothing you don't consent to, he said firmly. We'll need to be seen together. Restaurants, charity galas, the occasional business function. Physical affection in public will be necessary to sell the relationship. Hand-holding, my arm around you, perhaps a kiss on the cheek, but nothing more. Your bedroom door will have a lock that only you control. The specificity of that last detail sent a chill through me. He'd thought this through carefully, considered every contingency. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision motivated by jealousy over a 3 a.m. voice message. This was a plan he'd been formulating for weeks, maybe months. When do you need an answer? 24 hours. He pulled a business card from his desk drawer, sliding it across to me. My private number. When you've decided, call me directly. I took the card, my fingers brushing his for just a moment. That same electric current from last night raced up my arm, making my breath hitch. His pupils dilated slightly. He'd felt it too. The chemistry between us was undeniable, which made the cold formality of his proposal even more surreal. One more question, I said, standing to leave. Last night when you asked who I was texting, you thought it was someone else, a boyfriend maybe, and you were jealous. It wasn't a question, not really. But he nodded anyway, that muscle in his jaw ticking. Yes. So this jealousy, this obsession, it's not new. The voice message was just the catalyst that made you stop ignoring it. Correct. His eyes held mine. I've spent 18 months telling myself I could control this, that if I simply avoided you, eventually the fascination would fade. And then I heard your voice, soft and tender and full of love for your sister, and I realized I was lying to myself. I wanted that tenderness. I wanted you to look at me the way you must look at Maya. And the thought of you giving that kind of affection to anyone else made me want to destroy things. The raw honesty in that admission stole my breath. This was the real Kieran beneath the ice, a man capable of devastating emotion, who'd simply locked it all away. Until me. I'll call you tomorrow, I managed, clutching the folder in his card like lifelines. He nodded, already turning back to his computer, dismissing me. But as I reached the door, his voice stopped me. Serafina. My first name. He'd never used it before. I turned, finding him watching me with an intensity that made my knees weak. Whatever you decide, the job offer for Maya's medical care stands. Even if you say no to the rest of it, I won't let your sister suffer because of my complications. I fled the study for the second time in 12 hours, my heart pounding and my mind reeling. Back in my room, I spread the contract out on my narrow bed, reading every word with shaking hands. It was exactly as he'd described, generous, protective, and completely without any hidden clauses that would compromise me. Everything about this should have screamed danger. Kieran Blackwood was a man who commanded fear, who built his empire on shadows and carefully controlled violence. Getting involved with him, even in a fake relationship, was signing up for a world I'd spent my whole life avoiding. But Maya was dying, and this contract represented the only hope I had of saving her. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to Maya's contact. She'd sent me 3 texts since my voice message last night, each one more cheerful than the last. Lies, I knew. She was good at pretending everything was fine, even when her body was betraying her at every turn. The garden sounds beautiful. Take a picture for me? Doctor, Harrison says the new chemo might work. Fingers crossed. Love you, Sarah. Don't work too hard. My vision blurred. 17 years old, and she was worried about me working too hard. Meanwhile, I couldn't even afford the treatment that might save her life. What kind of sister did that make me? I looked at Kieran's business card, still clutched in my other hand. 1 phone call. 8 months of my life, and Maya would have a real chance at survival. When I framed it like that, the choice was obvious. But something else nagged at me. The way Kieran had looked at me, not like an employer at a servant, but like a drowning man looking at shore. Whatever this was between us, it was more than just him needing a fake girlfriend to ward off an obsessed rival. He'd admitted to watching me for 18 months, to being obsessed himself. If I agreed to this, I wouldn't just be playing a role for the public. I'd be stepping into the crosshairs of Kieran's carefully controlled emotions, and I wasn't sure either of us would survive that unchanged. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and desperation. I'd taken my rare Sunday off to visit Maya, spending the bus ride rehearsing how to tell her about Kieran's offer, without revealing the full truth. She was too perceptive for her own good. She'd know if I was lying. I found her in her usual room on the oncology ward, propped up against pillows and sketching in the journal I'd given her for her birthday. She looked smaller than she had 2 weeks ago, her skin translucent, dark circles shadowing her eyes. But when she saw me, her face lit up with genuine joy. Sarah! She set the journal aside, carefully managing her IV line. You didn't tell me you were coming today. Surprise visit. I pulled a chair close to her bed, taking her thin hand in mine. How are you feeling? Any better since they adjusted your meds? The nausea is worse, but Dr. Harrison says that means it's working. She squeezed my hand weakly. But you didn't come here to talk about my boring medical updates. What's going on? You have that look. What look? The one you get when you're about to make a huge decision and you're terrified. She studied my face with those wise beyond their years eyes. Spill. I took a deep breath. I got a job offer, a different kind of job. It pays extremely well, and part of the compensation includes comprehensive medical coverage for you. Any treatment you need, any trial, completely covered. Maya's eyes widened. Sarah, that's amazing. What kind of job? It's complicated. I'd be working as a personal assistant for a businessman. There would be travel, public appearances, and I'd need to maintain a certain image. But it's only for 8 months. This businessman, Maya said slowly, is he the one you've been working for? The scary rich one you never talk about? I should have known she'd put it together. Yes, Kieran Blackwood. Her expression shifted to concern. And what does he want in exchange for this miraculous job opportunity and medical coverage? For me to pretend to be his girlfriend, publicly, to ward off someone who's been making his life difficult. The words hung between us. Maya processed this for a long moment before speaking. So he wants you to lie for him, in front of people, for 8 months, and in exchange he'll save my life. It's not like that, isn't it? She pulled her hand away, and I felt the loss acutely. Sarah, you're selling yourself. Maybe not in the way that word usually means, but you're still trading yourself for my survival. I'm trading 8 months of my time, I corrected gently. 8 months of wearing nice dresses and going to parties. That's it. He's not asking for anything inappropriate. What about your life? Your plans? Maya's voice cracked. You've been saving to go back to school. You wanted to get your teaching degree. How are you supposed to do that while playing Cinderella for some scary billionaire? I hadn't thought about that. Teaching had been a distant dream, something I'd shelved when our parents died and left me as Maya's guardian at 19. But she was right. Taking Kieran's offer meant putting that dream on hold even longer. My life can wait, I said firmly. Your life can't. Maya, the trial Dr. Harrison recommended, it costs $200,000. Even with every penny I've saved, I'm not even close. This offer, it's the only way. Tears gathered in her eyes. I don't want you to sacrifice everything for me. You're not a sacrifice. You're my little moon, remember? And I'd walk through fire for you. I cupped her face gently. This is my choice, Maya. One I'm making freely because you're worth it. She studied me for a long moment, those two wise eyes seeing more than I wanted to reveal. You like him. The statement caught me off guard. What? This Kieran Blackwood. The way your voice changes when you say his name. The way you're trying so hard to convince me this is just a business arrangement. She wiped her eyes. You like him? And that scares you more than pretending to be his girlfriend. That's ridiculous. He's my employer. He's cold and controlling and he's offering to save my life when he doesn't have to, Maya interrupted. That doesn't sound cold to me. It sounds like someone who cares about you enough to help the person you love most. I hadn't thought about it like that, but she was right. Kieran could have simply offered me a raise or a loan. Instead, he'd structured this arrangement to ensure Maya's care was comprehensive, permanent. He'd thought about what I needed, not just what would benefit him. I should probably get back, I said, not ready to examine those implications. But I'll call you tonight. And Maya, don't worry about me. I can handle Kieran Blackwood. Her smile was sad and knowing. That's what I'm afraid of. The bus ride back to the mansion gave me too much time to think. About Maya's perceptiveness, about the contract still sitting in my room, about the fact that I only had 6 hours left before my 24-hour deadline expired. By the time I reached the servants' entrance, dusk had fallen and the house was lit from within, warm and inviting from the outside, cold and imposing from within. I found Kieran in his study. Of course. The man practically lived in that room. He looked up when I knocked, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Torres, I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. I've made my decision. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. I'll do it, all of it, on one condition. His eyebrows rose fractionally. And that would be, when the 8 months are over, you help me apply to college. I want to become a teacher. I want recommendations, connections, whatever strings you can pull to get me into a program. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze steadily. If I'm giving you 8 months of my life, I want you to help me build the life that comes after. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then slowly, deliberately, he stood and crossed to where I waited. He extended his hand for a formal shake. Done. You'll have everything you need. His hand was warm, his grip firm, but not crushing. That electric current raced between us again, stronger than before. We stood there for a heartbeat too long, hands clasped, eyes locked. Then he released me and returned to his desk, already pulling out paperwork. We start in 2 weeks. That gives me time to arrange your cover story and begin the public campaign. In the meantime, you'll need a new wardrobe. I'm having a stylist come tomorrow. I can dress myself. Not for the circles we'll be moving in. His tone left no room for argument. You'll be representing me now, Miss Torres. That requires a certain presentation. I bristled at the implication, but bit back my retort. This was part of the arrangement I'd agreed to. Fine. What time? 9 a.m. And Serafina? He looked up from the contract he was signing. Thank you for agreeing. I know this isn't ideal. Neither is watching my sister die. The words came out harsher than I intended. But we both have things we're trying to protect. At least we're honest about it. His smile was cold, controlled. Honesty. Yes. Let's see how long that lasts. The transformation began the next morning. Miranda, the stylist Kieran had hired, arrived with 3 assistants and enough designer bags to fill my small room twice over. She took one look at me in my simple black uniform and sighed dramatically. Darling, we have so much work to do. 6 hours later, I barely recognized myself. My hair had been professionally colored to enhance the natural highlights, cut to frame my face with soft waves. My eyebrows had been shaped, my skin treated with products that probably cost more than my monthly salary. And the clothes? This is too much, I protested, as Miranda held up yet another evening gown. When would I even wear this? Next Saturday. Mr. Blackwood is taking you to the Harrington Foundation Gala. She hung the dress, a deep sapphire silk that would probably cost 3 months of rent, alongside a dozen others. You'll need to look the part. The part. Right. I was no longer Serafina Torres, housekeeper. I was Serafina Torres, mysterious new girlfriend of the notorious Kieran Blackwood. The thought made my stomach churn. That evening, Kieran requested my presence for dinner. Not in the servants' dining room, but in the formal dining room where he took his meals alone. I descended the stairs in one of the new dresses Miranda had deemed suitable for intimate dinners. A deep burgundy that hugged my curves before flowing to my knees. He was already seated, reading something on his tablet. When he looked up and saw me, his entire body went still. The tablet clattered against the table, forgotten. Miss Torres. His voice was rougher than usual. You look. He didn't finish the sentence. Just stood abruptly, pulling out my chair with barely controlled movements. I sat, acutely aware of how close he stood, of how his fingers lingered for just a moment on the back of my chair before he returned to his own seat. We need to establish some ground rules, he said, once the first course had been served by a nervous Roberto. Public displays of affection will be necessary. I need to know your boundaries. My boundaries? I took a sip of wine to steady myself. You're the one who drafted a contract. The contract covers legal requirements. I'm asking about personal ones. He leaned forward, his intensity pinning me in place. I won't touch you in ways that make you uncomfortable. But I need to know what those ways are. The request was so unexpected, so considerate coming from a man known for taking what he wanted, that I found myself actually thinking about it. Hand-holding is fine. Your arm around me, okay. Kissing. I hesitated. On the cheek, acceptable. Anything more would need discussion first. He nodded once, filing this away. And in private, when we're in this house, away from watching eyes? In private, we're employer and employee. Nothing changes. Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or resignation. Of course. Purely professional. The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation. But I couldn't stop noticing things. The way his eyes kept drifting to where the dress's neckline dipped. The tension in his shoulders when I laughed at something Roberto said. The careful way he made sure we never touched, even accidentally. By the time dessert arrived, the air between us was thick with unspoken things. I was about to excuse myself when Kieran spoke again. Tell me about teaching. Why that profession? The question caught me off guard. Why do you care? Because it's part of our arrangement. And because I'm curious about what drives you to want it despite everything else in your life being chaos. I considered lying, giving him some surface answer. but something about the genuine curiosity in his expression made me tell the truth instead. My mother was a teacher. Before she died, she used to say that education was the only real power that couldn't be taken away. When you know things, when you understand the world, no one can make you feel small. I traced the rim of my wine glass. I want to give that to kids who feel small. Kids like Maya and me felt after our parents died. Kieran was quiet for a long moment. Your parents? The accident was 7 years ago? Car crash. Drunk driver ran a red light. The old pain surfaced, familiar and dull. Maya was 10. I was 19, just started college. Had to drop out to take care of her and work full-time. I met his gaze. So yes, teaching is important to me. It's not just a dream. It's completing something my mother started. Then we'll make sure it happens. The conviction in his voice surprised me. When these 8 months end, you'll have your degree. I'll make certain of it. Why? The question burst out of me. Why do you care so much about keeping your promises to me? If you say, just the housekeeper one more time, I'm going to do something we'll both regret. His voice was soft, but edged with steel. You're not just anything, Serafina. The sooner you accept that, the easier this arrangement will be for both of us. The use of my first name sent shivers down my spine. We stared at each other across the table, the air crackling with tension. Finally, I stood, needing to escape before I did something stupid. Thank you for dinner, Mr. Blackwood. I should go prepare for tomorrow. He didn't argue, but his eyes followed me all the way to the door. I could feel his gaze like a physical touch, burning between my shoulder blades. It wasn't until I was safely back in my room that I let myself acknowledge the truth Miranda's observation had planted. This wasn't just an arrangement, not for him, and increasingly not for me either. Whatever was building between us, it was dangerous, combustible, and probably inevitable. And I had 8 months to figure out how to survive it. The Harrington Foundation Gala was everything I'd feared and more. Hundreds of wealthy elite gathered in a ballroom that dripped with crystal and gold, everyone dressed in designer labels that cost more than cars. I felt like an imposter in my sapphire gown, even though Miranda had assured me I looked perfect. Kieran's hand rested possessively at the small of my back as we navigated the crowd. He'd been attentive all evening, fetching my champagne, introducing me to business associates, his thumb occasionally stroking small circles against my spine in a way that made concentration impossible. To everyone watching, we were exactly what we were pretending to be. A couple deeply, if recently, in love. You're doing beautifully, he murmured near my ear, sending shivers down my neck. Everyone believes it. Because you're a good actor, I replied quietly, smiling at a passing couple who nodded greetings. Is that what you think I'm doing? Acting? His hand tightened fractionally on my waist. Interesting. Before I could respond, a woman's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. Kieran, darling, I've been looking everywhere for you. I turned to see her, Valentina Russo. She was stunning in the way that came from perfect genes and unlimited resources. Tall, with glossy black hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes like a predator sizing up prey. Those eyes landed on me with barely concealed contempt. Valentina. Kieran's voice went cold. I wasn't aware you'd be attending tonight. Father secured tickets last minute. Some boring business obligation. She stepped closer, deliberately positioning herself between us. And who is this? I don't believe we've met. Serafina Torres, I said, extending my hand with more confidence than I felt. Kieran's girlfriend. Girlfriend. Valentina's laugh was like glass breaking. How unexpected. Kieran has never brought anyone to these events before. You must be very special. She is, Kieran said simply, pulling me back against his side. Now, if you'll excuse us, we were just about to dance. He led me to the floor before Valentina could respond, one hand settling at my waist, the other capturing mine. The orchestra was playing something slow and intimate, too intimate for two people pretending. That was her, I said unnecessarily. She's beautiful. She's dangerous. His jaw was tight. And now she's seen you with me. The game has officially begun. We swayed together, his body warm and solid against mine. I'd never been this close to him for this long. Never felt how perfectly we fit together, how his height meant my head tucked naturally under his chin. It would be so easy to lean into this, to pretend it was real. Kieran, I started, not sure what I wanted to say. Don't. His hand spread wider on my back, holding me closer. Not here. Not now. So I didn't. I just let him lead me around the floor, aware of every eye on us, of Valentina watching from the sidelines with murder in her eyes. This was what he'd warned me about. This was the danger I'd agreed to face. What he hadn't warned me about was the danger of these moments, of forgetting this was all pretend. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. More introductions, more champagne, more of Kieran's careful touches that set my skin on fire. By the time we returned to the mansion, exhaustion and emotional overload had me reeling. You did well tonight, Kieran said as we stood in the foyer. Better than well. You were perfect. I'm not perfect. The words came out sharper than intended. I'm just good at pretending. He caught my hand before I could flee upstairs. Are you pretending? Because I'm not. The confession hung between us, raw and dangerous. I stared up at him, seeing past the ice for the first time to the man beneath. The one who'd been watching me for 18 months. Who'd arranged all of this not just to ward off Valentina, but to keep me close. Kieran, we can't. I know. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. I know all the reasons we can't, but that doesn't change how I feel. It hasn't for 18 months. This was supposed to be an arrangement, a business deal. It was. It is. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his heat. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to spend every moment of these 8 months wanting you. It just means I won't act on it unless you want me to. The ball was in my court. 8 months stretched ahead. 8 months of pretending in public, of this growing tension in private. 8 months of Kieran's careful restraint and my own confused desire. I should go to bed, I whispered. He released my hand immediately, stepping back. Of course. Good night, Serafina. I fled upstairs, my heart pounding. In my room, I collapsed on the bed, still in my gown, and pulled out my phone to call Maya. How was the gala? She asked immediately. Did you look stunning? Did he look at you like he wanted to devour you? Maya! I laughed despite everything. It was complicated. Valentina showed up. She's beautiful and terrifying. But he chose to be there with you, Maya pointed out. That counts for something. It's fake, though. All of it. Is it? Her voice was gentle. Sarah, sometimes the lines between pretend and real get blurry, especially when real feelings are involved. There are no real feelings. Keep telling yourself that. I could hear her smile. But Sarah, be careful. Not with him. With yourself. I don't want you getting hurt because you convinced yourself you weren't allowed to care. After hanging up, I replayed her words. Be careful with yourself. The problem was, it was already too late. Somewhere between agreeing to this arrangement and dancing with Kieran tonight, I'd started caring. Started wondering what it would be like if this were real. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. The next 6 months passed in a blur of public appearances and private restraint. True to his word, Kieran never pushed beyond the boundaries I'd set. But the tension between us grew with each passing week. Every touch in public became charged, every private moment crackling with unspoken desire. Maya's health improved steadily with the new treatment, giving me hope I'd almost forgotten how to feel. But Valentina's threats grew more serious. Subtle at first, a warning delivered through intermediaries, a near accident with a car that swerved too close. Kieran increased security, his protectiveness becoming almost suffocating. "She's escalating," he said one evening in his study, 6 months into our arrangement. "I'm moving you to the East Wing. My wing. The security is better." "That's not... we can't..." I stumbled over my words. Sleeping in the same wing as Kieran, just rooms away, felt too intimate. Too real. "It's necessary." His voice left no room for argument. "Valentina knows where your current room is. She's made threats against you specifically, Serafina. I won't risk your safety for the sake of propriety." So I moved, into a suite 5 times the size of my old room, with a bathroom that had heated floors and a walk-in closet bigger than my childhood bedroom. It was luxury I'd never imagined, and it came with one significant problem. Kieran was next door. I could hear him moving around at night, could sense his presence through the walls. The proximity was torture. One night, 3 weeks after the move, I woke to sounds of distress from his room. Without thinking, I grabbed a robe and knocked on his door. When he didn't answer, I tried the handle. It opened. Kieran was having a nightmare, thrashing in his massive bed, sheets tangled around him. Sweat dampened his hair, and he was murmuring something I couldn't make out. Without hesitation, I moved to his side, gently touching his shoulder. "Kieran, wake up. You're dreaming." His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. For a moment, he didn't recognize me. Then reality crashed back, and he grabbed my wrist. Not painfully, but firmly. "Serafina." My name was rough, broken. "You shouldn't be here. You were having a nightmare." I sat on the edge of his bed, not caring about propriety anymore. About what happened 15 years ago. He released my wrist, but his hand didn't go far, just slid down to hold mine instead. "My brother. I dream about the accident. About not being able to save him." The confession cracked something open between us. I stayed, holding his hand, as he told me about that night. About the car crash that killed his younger brother. About the guilt he'd carried. About how he'd built walls around his heart to never feel that kind of loss again. "Until you," he finished quietly. "You made me feel again. Made me want things I'd convinced myself I didn't need. Kieran, I'm in love with you." The words tumbled out, raw and unguarded. I know it wasn't supposed to happen. I know this was just supposed to be an arrangement. But somewhere between that first voice message and now, between watching you care for your sister and watching you become yourself in these past 6 months, I fell. Completely. Irrevocably. Tears pricked my eyes. "You can't love me. If you say just the housekeeper, I swear to God, Serafina." I kissed him, leaned forward and pressed my lips to his before I could talk myself out of it. For a heartbeat, he froze. Then his hand came up to cup my face, and he kissed me back with 18 months of pent-up longing. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not alone in this." "You're not alone." The admission felt like freedom. "I've been falling for months. I just didn't want to admit it because this is supposed to end in 2 months. Because you were supposed to be temporary. Then let's not be temporary." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "Stay. After the 8 months. Not as an arrangement, but as us. Real us." "Kieran, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But Serafina, I have spent 18 months wanting you and 6 months falling in love with you. I don't need more time to know what I want. And what I want is you. In my life, in my home, in my bed. Everything, if you'll have me. I should have been terrified, should have been cautious. Instead, I found myself nodding. Yes, I'll have you. He pulled me down beside him, holding me close as if afraid I'd disappear. I'm keeping you, he murmured against my hair. Fair warning, I don't let go of things I love. Good, I whispered back. Neither do I. We fell asleep, tangled together. The walls between us finally, completely demolished. 2 months later, Valentina's father's merger completed. She left the country, her threats evaporating with her departure. But by then, Serafina and I had already built something new. She'd enrolled in university, Maya was in full remission, and every night she fell asleep in my bed, exactly where she belonged. The arrangement had ended. The real thing had just begun. 3 months had passed since that night when everything changed. 3 months of waking up wrapped in Kieran's arms, of stolen kisses in hallways I used to clean, of building something real from the ashes of our arrangement. Maya was thriving, her remission holding strong, her energy returning. She'd even started talking about college, about the future she'd once thought impossible. I stood in Kieran's study, our study now, he insisted, reviewing applications for the teaching program at Columbia. The acceptance letter had arrived yesterday, full scholarship courtesy of an anonymous donor that we both knew wasn't anonymous at all. My fingers traced the university seal, still barely believing this was my life now. You're thinking too hard again. Kieran's voice came from the doorway, that hint of amusement I'd learned to recognize threading through his words. He'd shed his jacket and tie, the top buttons of his shirt undone in that way that still made my pulse race. I can practically hear your brain spinning from downstairs. I turned to face him fully, the acceptance letter still in my hand. This is real, isn't it? All of it. Maya's getting better. I'm going to Columbia. I gestured between us, still struggling sometimes to name what we'd become. Together. He crossed to me in 3 long strides, pulling me against him with a possessiveness that no longer frightened me. We're together, Serafina, and yes, it's real. Every impossible bit of it. I melted into his embrace, breathing in his scent, cedar and smoke and something uniquely him. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for the other shoe to drop. Nothing's going to go wrong. His lips found my temple, pressing a gentle kiss there. I won't let it. But even as he said it, I felt him tense slightly. That infinitesimal shift in his body language that I'd learned meant he was holding something back. I pulled away enough to see his face, finding his expression carefully neutral. Too neutral. What aren't you telling me? It's nothing you need to worry about. He tried to redirect, his hand moving to cup my face. Just some business complications. Nothing that affects us. Kieran. I stepped back completely, crossing my arms. We promised. No more secrets. That was the deal when this stopped being fake. His jaw tightened, that muscle ticking the way it did when he was wrestling with control. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. A gesture of frustration I'd seen maybe 3 times in all the months I'd known him. Valentina's back in the country. She arrived 2 days ago. The name sent ice through my veins. We'd been so careful, so vigilant during our arrangement. But once she'd left for her father's business in Italy, I'd let myself relax. Let myself believe that chapter was closed. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because I didn't want to worry you. Because you've been so happy these past few months and I... He broke off, something raw crossing his features. I wanted to protect that. Protect you. By keeping me in the dark? Anger sparked through my fear. That's not protection, Kieran. That's control. And we're supposed to be past that. You're right. The admission came quietly. You're right. And I'm sorry. I'm still learning how to do this. How to be in a relationship where I don't control everything. He reached for my hand, relief evident when I let him take it. Valentina's been making inquiries. About you, about Maya, about us. My security team is monitoring her movements. What does she want? Revenge, probably. Or to prove that what we have isn't real, that it was all just the arrangement. His thumb stroked circles on my wrist, that familiar gesture that always calmed me. She can't accept that I chose you, that someone like me could actually fall in love. Someone like you, I repeated softly. You mean someone who thinks he doesn't deserve happiness? His eyes met mine, and for a moment the ice melted completely, showing me the man beneath, the one still carrying guilt from 15 years ago, still believing he needed to be punished for failing to save his brother. I'm working on that, he said. You make me believe I might deserve this. Deserve you. I pulled him down for a kiss, pouring everything I felt into it. Love, frustration, fear, determination. When we broke apart, his breathing was ragged. We'll handle Valentina together, I said firmly. No more protecting me by keeping secrets. We're partners now, remember? Partners. A small smile tugged at his lips. I like the sound of that. The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the study door. Marco, Kieran's head of security, entered without waiting for permission. Something he only did in emergencies. Sir, we have a situation. His eyes flicked to me, then back to Kieran. It's urgent. Kieran's entire demeanor shifted, becoming the cold, calculating man who ran an empire. What happened? Miss Maya Torres was approached outside Metropolitan Hospital 30 minutes ago. A woman matching Valentina Russo's description. My heart stopped. Is she okay? Is Maya... She's safe. Your sister called hospital security immediately, and they escorted the woman off the premises. But Miss Torres is shaken. Marco pulled out his tablet, showing security footage. The woman claimed to be a family friend, said she had a message for Serafina. On the screen, I watched grainy footage of Valentina approaching Maya outside the hospital's main entrance. My sister's body language was clearly defensive, stepping back as Valentina moved closer. The woman's mouth moved, words I couldn't hear but could imagine. Then hospital security intervened, and Valentina walked away with an expression that even on low-quality footage looked venomous. That's it. Kieran's voice was deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. She's crossed the line. Kieran. I grabbed his arm as he started toward the door. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. End this permanently. The ice in his voice terrified me. This was the side of Kieran I'd heard about but never truly witnessed. The man who made people disappear, who built his empire on fear and calculated brutality. You can't. I fought to keep my voice steady. Whatever you're thinking, there has to be another way. There isn't. He turned to face me, and his expression made me take an involuntary step back. She threatened your sister. She threatened what's mine. There are consequences for that. I'm not yours to avenge. The words came out sharper than intended. And Maya certainly isn't. We're not possessions, Kieran. We're people you love. There's a difference. Something in my words penetrated his rage. His shoulders dropped slightly, some of the murderous intent draining from his posture. But his eyes remained cold, calculating. What would you have me do? Wait for her to escalate? Wait until she actually hurts Maya or you? His voice was controlled again, but barely. I won't risk that, Serafina. I can't. Then we go to the police. We get a restraining order. We handle this legally. Marco made a sound that might have been a laugh. With all due respect, Miss Torres, restraining orders don't stop people like Valentina Russo. Her family has connections that rival Mr. Blackwood's. A piece of paper won't protect your sister. Then what will? I looked between them, feeling the familiar helplessness creeping back in. Because I'm not going to let either of you do something that puts you in danger. I won't trade Maya's safety for Kieran's freedom or life. It won't come to that, Kieran assured me, but his eyes told a different story. Whatever he was planning, it wasn't legal and probably wasn't safe. Marco, increase security on Maya. I want someone with her 24/7 and find out where Valentina's staying. I want surveillance on every move she makes. Already done, sir. We've also flagged her passport. If she tries to leave the country, we'll know. After Marco left, silence settled over the study like a shroud. Kieran moved to the window, his back to me, hands clasped behind him in that posture I recognized as him wrestling with demons I couldn't see. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "If I had handled her differently from the beginning, if I hadn't involved you in my world." "Stop." I crossed to him, wrapping my arms around him from behind. "You didn't force me into anything. I made choices. I chose to accept your arrangement. I chose to fall in love with you. And I'm choosing now to face this together." He turned in my embrace, his hands coming up to frame my face. "I'm trying very hard not to become the monster you were afraid of when we first met. But Serafina, when it comes to protecting you and Maya, I have limits. I have lines I'll cross without hesitation. I know." I held his gaze steadily. "But I'm asking you not to cross them yet. Give me a chance to talk to Valentina first, woman to woman without threats or violence. Let me try." "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." "More dangerous than you going after her?" I challenged. "At least if I talk to her, there's a chance of resolving this without anyone getting hurt, including you." We stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills. Finally, Kieran closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. "One conversation, in a public place, with my security present. And if she makes one move that even hints at violence, then you do what you have to do," I finished. "But let me try first." He pulled me against him, holding on like I might disappear. "When did you become so brave?" "When I fell in love with someone worth being brave for." Later that night, as we lay tangled in bed, Kieran's hand absently traced patterns on my shoulder. I'd almost drifted off when he spoke, his voice rough with something I couldn't identify. "There's something else you need to know, about Valentina, about why she's so obsessed." I shifted to look at him, finding his expression haunted in the dim light from the window. "What is it?" "My brother. The one who died in the accident 15 years ago. He was engaged to Valentina's older sister." The revelation hung in the air, puzzle pieces suddenly clicking into place. "Kieran, her sister died too, in the same crash. Valentina was only 13, but she blamed me for both deaths. My brother was driving because I asked him to pick me up from a business meeting that ran late. If I had just called a car service..." His voice cracked. "Valentina has spent 15 years believing I killed her sister. Maybe she's right. You know that's not true." I cupped his face, forcing him to look at me. "It was an accident, a drunk driver. You didn't cause that. But I set the circumstances in motion. And now Valentina sees history repeating. Me taking another woman from her family in her mind. Her sister never got to marry my brother, build a life with him. Why should you get to have what they lost?" Understanding crashed through me. This wasn't just about obsession or rejection. This was about grief twisted into vengeance. About a girl who'd lost her sister and spent 15 years nursing that wound until it poisoned everything. "Then there has to be a way to reach her," I said. "To help her see that punishing you won't bring her sister back, that Maya and I aren't stand-ins for the family she lost. Valentina doesn't want peace, Serafina. She wants blood, mine specifically." He pulled me closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Which is why I can't let you near her. I can't risk losing you the way I lost them. But even as he said it, I was already planning, already thinking about how to approach a woman whose grief had calcified into something dark and destructive. Because the alternative, watching Kieran destroy himself trying to protect me, watching him become the monster he feared, was unacceptable. When he finally fell asleep, I slipped from bed and retrieved my phone. One text to Maya, asking for the exact details of what Valentina had said. Another to Marco, requesting Valentina's hotel information. For security purposes, I claimed. If I was going to save the man I loved from his own protective instincts, I'd have to do it before he realized what I was planning. The early morning light was just beginning to filter through the curtains when I heard it. A notification on Kieran's phone that made my blood run cold. I shouldn't have looked, but something made me reach for it, made me read the message from Marco that changed everything. Sir, Intel confirms Valentina has hired external assets. Photos of Miss Torres and her sister. This isn't just harassment anymore. You were right to be concerned. Below the text were images, surveillance photos of me leaving the mansion, of Maya at the hospital, of both of us going about our daily lives, unaware we were being watched and documented. The question wasn't if Valentina would escalate anymore. It was when. And what she was planning would require those photos as evidence, as proof, as targets. I looked at Kieran, still sleeping beside me, his face peaceful in a way it rarely was when awake. He'd spent 15 years carrying guilt for an accident he didn't cause. I wouldn't let him add my death or Maya's to that burden, even if it meant walking into danger myself. Even if it meant facing Valentina Russo alone.